Bob. In John chapter 8, verses 30 to 32, we read the following. As he spoke these words, many believed in him. Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, "If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed." Doesn't that mean if you don't abide in Jesus' word and don't become his disciples, you never really believed in him?
Well, that's a good question. And actually, just if I can give a little bit of a personal history here, when I was in the doctoral program at Dallas Seminary, one of the questions on my we had six, I think they were 4-hour exams. We had 4 hours to write answers to these various questions. And one of them was this passage, John 8, 30 to 32 and following, and to explain it. And the verses read this, "And as he spoke these words, many believed in him. Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, 'If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.'" And people point out this is a substandard believing in him and a substandard believing in him because he says, "If you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed." In other words, they need to yet abide in his word to become his disciples. And if all believers are disciples, then they're not yet believers. And also, verse 32 says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And people say, well, all believers are set free, and these people need to know the truth to be set free, so they're not yet believers. You see how that works? But the problem with that is, first of all, like in John chapter 2, verses 23 and following, here it's not they who say they believed in him, it's John who says they believed in him. And John already told us in John 3:16 that whoever believes in him should not perish but has everlasting life. I too have a Baptist background, and we used to sing the song, "Whosoever surely meaneth me," right? Based on John 3:16. Well, these people believed in him, therefore they're born again. And we don't guess they believed in him. John tells us. And this is inspired scripture. And then Jesus says to those Jews who believed him, again, John says they believed him, "If you abide in my word, you're my disciples indeed." I think one of the things we need to understand is that discipleship is not the same as the new birth. Jesus had unsaved disciples. In John chapter 6, we're told that some of you do not believe in me. And then many of them departed. So at least some of his disciples were unbelievers. Even Judas, one of the inner circle, one of the 12, didn't believe in him. And so being a disciple is not the same as being a believer. Our churches can have disciples. If an unbeliever comes to your church and they want to come and regularly hear the word taught, are you going to say, "Oh, no, you can't come until you're born again"? No, you're going to welcome them. If they want to come to Sunday school, that's okay, isn't it? If they want to come to your home Bible study, isn't that okay? But what do you call a person who's learning more about Jesus? The word disciple, mathetes, means a learner. And so anyone, born again or not born again, who's learning more about Jesus is a disciple. And so when Jesus says, "If you abide in my words, you are my disciples indeed," the point is, if they want to be his disciples, they must abide in his words. That's the heart of discipleship, is abiding in his teachings. And then he says, "If you know the truth shall make you free." Well, this is like Romans chapter 6. Romans 6 says, we're no longer slaves of sin. We're now slaves of righteousness. But we need to reckon ourselves to be dead to sin in order to experience freedom from sin. What Jesus is talking about here is being experientially set free from slavery to sin. The way that occurs is by knowing the truth. And the truth sets us free. Now what happens is, in the verses that follow, you find that this is a hostile crowd. They answer, "We are Abraham's offspring and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free?" And they go back and forth, and they're obviously hostile. And in verses 45 and 46, Jesus says, "But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me? Which of you convicts me of sin? And if I tell you the truth, why do you not believe me?" In 45 and 46, twice he says, "You don't believe me." And yet in 30 and 31, twice John tells us that this group in 30 to 32 did believe him. In my doctoral exam, the question is, how do you harmonize that? The simple answer is, there's two groups. There's a big circle, right? And this is all the people in the crowd, and they're mostly unbelieving Jews. And then there's a little circle in the middle, which is made up of Jews who came to believe in him. And in verses 30 to 32, Jesus specifically talks to the believers in the larger group. And then in 33 and following, the unbelievers in the crowd start interacting with him. And if you follow the words they and them all the way through John 8, it's unbelievers, 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 and then we come to a small pocket of believers in 30 to 32, and then it goes on with the unbelievers. They even say we were not born of fornication, which shows that the rumor circulated that there was no virgin birth, that Jesus was born due to immorality, that his mother was immoral. And so they're insulting Jesus, they're doing all these things, and he's saying, well, you don't believe me. But these people, Jesus does stop and talk to them. So I hope that makes sense, but people make mountains out of molehills. I mean, something that's real obvious in Scripture, and somehow, because they're looking for ways to have substandard faith, they have to somehow import it into the text.